Good morning. So, I decided since I'm making a series of videos on my Florida lifestyle, um, I am a widow. I'll soon be 66. Yeah. And I live in Florida on the Gulf Coast. Just a little bit, well, a lot of bit, well, kind of a bit north of Tampa. We're still considered Tampa Bay. So, no. Yes? No. I don't think I'm really. I'll have to check that out on a map, but let's not get technical. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the things that really frighten me about living in Florida. Maybe they're silly things, maybe they're rarity things, but they're things that have happened and that I've had to either read about and or witness. And it ain't pretty. I suppose it could happen anywhere except for one thing. That could only happen in the South. But let's talk about it, shall we? Okay. So lately, the biggest thing that's been frightening me is I come out of my kid's house in the evening around 10:30 p.m. and I've been very frightened about encountering an alligator. Why? Because recently a woman was attacked. She was a homeless woman, and she was, I guess, going to her camp along the water's edge, and an alligator took her. And it's not unusual to hear about alligators taking things. Usually it's a dog or a small child. Yeah, that's actually happened and not that long ago. So I think that's a fear of mine. It seems maybe a little ridiculous. How often does it happen? It happens. I mean, I'd say at least every couple of years I hear about an incident. I think the second thing that really, really frightens me is what they call, oh my gosh, I have a terrible problem with my thinking. I mean, my memory. Give me a second here. I need coffee. Sinkholes. Sinkholes. Yes, that scares the ever-lovins out of me, and I'm going to tell you why. Ugh. A couple of news stories. One that was just the most horrifying thing I've ever heard of, and usually a sinkhole starts out rather small. One day, you wake up and you're like, is that corner moved? And with it may come a crack in the wall or foundation. Speaking of cracks in the foundation, the neighbor on one side of my kid's house has cracks all down their wall. That makes me nervous because they're on a water's edge, and her backyard, she has a swimming pool built in. Her backyard is sinking into the water. Yeah. And she's been trying to do stupid things like add rocks and stuff to it, but that's not the solution. She needs like an engineer to, but that's beside the point. Sorry, old people talk. So I lived in a neighborhood in a town even north of where I already am at. We lived there for years and rented a house. And this was before I bought a house in Maine. Anyway, sinkholes were such common occurrences. There was like once a week, a guy with the fill would be there digging the hole, pumping the cement in. What they do is, okay, so here's Florida land. The first bottom layer is water. On top of that is something we call limestone. On top of that is sand. And then they start putting people in houses and parking lots and properties all over the place on top of this very fragile layers. Now, if, for instance, a blueberry place moved in, and started using a great deal of water to water the blueberries. And then in that neighborhood and several others, sinkholes started developing. And that's okay, except for that some sinkholes are extremely dangerous. And what happened was there was this news thing. A woman with, I think, at least one small child, at least had understood what came first. There was an enormous cracking sound under her home. And she grabbed her kids and ran out the door. And the whole place, except for the shell, sunk into the ground. That's bad enough. What's worse, and I still want to cry when I think about it, not long ago, several years, I guess, a family who had just had an inspection for the foundation and, you know, any sinkhole activity. They had an actual inspection. I'm not sure if this house had a history or not. It didn't really say in the article or on the news. It was a big deal. Oh, God. One night, so they'd already had their inspection. One night, two brothers living in the house, I think there were other family members too, I can't remember. He starts screaming for his brother. His brother comes, opens the door. The entire room had sunken in. The guy was reaching out for his brother, and it took him down. It took him down in. I remember that family was very angry because, you know, when the authorities got there, man, that hole was huge. An act of God, I guess you would call it. Anyway, that brother was lost, and they had digging machines and rescue it was so fragile they couldn't go down and even see if he was like still alive in a pocket. It's doubtful that he was. I can't even imagine being that family. That screwed me up. Then, you know, there's a lot of violence down here. Even in my areas that they weren't citified, you know. They were small towns. I prefer small towns. My husband always preferred small towns, my late husband. And some of the things, I think the thing that haunts me most, even to this day, was the story about a little girl named Jennifer Odom and what happened to her. And I think of her still to this day. The family still would love to find the killer. And I think I read not long ago, a couple years back, that they did find their DNA, who did it. And then there was I don't know, there's just been a lot of heinous, violent crimes against young women and children that it scares me. I feel really scared sometimes at night when I get, because even like really old people, like in their 90s, horrible things that you hear. Drug addicts looking for drugs. And they're sick people, some of them, really sick people. And that scares me. And that's why when Bonnie was my youngest daughter, I had her when I was 41. And when she was about 7 years old, I said, I'm getting her out of here. I said, I don't mind coming down for the winters, but I don't want her growing up down here. I don't like what she's seeing. She started learning how to ride a bike, and I was so terrified of her driving just in my neighborhood because of all the things I had heard and seen. And so I moved her to Maine. It's all I could afford at the time. Now I can't even afford that. So here I am, Florida salt life. But anyway, other things that I feel have, taken the thrill of Florida out of me is, okay, so I covered, I'm sorry, I have to think again. I just got to take a minute. I know there's another thing, but I can't think what it was. The cost of living has gone insane. When I first came down here with my late husband in the 90s, we rented an older, it was like a 1950s house, small, 2-bedroom, and I think it was 1.5 bath, but I can't remember. And it was a little place. We had 3 kids, so we let the kids have the bedrooms, and we just moved the dining room table, and we threw a mattress on the floor there. I was younger, I could get down on a mat on the floor. And then $450 a month covered all the utilities in the place. $450 a month. Right, it wasn't in the greatest neighborhood, and it wasn't a nice remodeled for that time in the 90s. It was, an old house. But we rented that place several winters. Now, like an Airbnb in this vicinity is $1,500 to $3,000 a week. Try getting a winter rental now. Yeah, it ain't gonna be easy. I have seen some trailer, but I don't know if they will do just the winter, if you need a yearly lease. There were trailers in my park for $1,300 a month, but you pay your own utilities. Trash, I think, was free there, but water and sewer you paid for, and electric. So the expense of it, and where so many people, like over 1 million people moved in 2022, Lordy, I heard that 500,000 left, but you'd never know it from my end. The roads are heavily trafficked, and there's always not enough. It just seems like the grocery store shelves are a little, I don't know. Sometimes you can't find what you want. You definitely can't find the lowest price items at Walmart. They're always cleaned out, which forces you to pay more if you weren't the first to get there. I swear, I think back when there was the toilet paper shortage during COVID, I do believe workers at Walmart were messaging family members, and they would come and clean it out. And then you'd go, they'd say, oh, yeah, we got toilet paper. And an hour later, it was all gone. Same with Zephyr Hills water, which I love Zephyr Hills water. One of my viewers said it's not real spring water. Maybe it isn't, but it's the best tasting water in a bottle that I've had. How do I know that? Well, back when I could taste. Now I can't, but I still seem to prefer it. Okay, so there's the busyness, the added people, and now it's just become so impossible for everyday people to even find a rental down here. It's not easy. They want $1,200-1,500 a month for an older, outdated, not remodeled place. I pointed one out to my son Dennis, who's looking for a place to move to on his own. He wants to be on his own. And he said, Mom, he says, you know what kind of neighborhood that's going to be in. Just, look at the house. He's probably right. We have the ultra rich, we have the upper middle class, the lower middle class, and then we just have the poor. And they don't get to live in nice places. You drive by some areas, and it's hard to believe that both are existing in the same area. The town I'm in has come up considerably from the 90s, and it's become a very pretty little town. They started remodeling it just before the 2008 crash, and then or even before that, I think, and everything stopped, and it just was left and looked horrible for years. And then the boom came back, of course, and then they start building and fixing those cute little buildings, and now it's very pretty down there. So, in town. Um, what else bothers me? I think that pretty much covers it. You know, we're really crowded down here now. You can't go anywhere and say, oh, if I get there at 7 in the morning, I won't have to face, battling at the grocery stores. But they're full all the time. It never used to be that way, not before COVID. I moved down here in 2018 for good. Playing around with it before that, well, we were snowbirds, it's a long story and I'm not going to get into it, but I stopped coming down every winter. We only came down for Christmases, and my husband would stay down here and work. But would I leave Florida? Well, I can't. I can't afford to leave Florida. I'm in a subsidized apartment. I don't pay much rent. Right now, I'm not even paying electric. You don't have to pay water here. So it's nice, and you do what you have to do. This is where, Florida's where Dennis's last breath was taken, and most of our income went with him. And now I just do what I can. My kids help me when I need it, and I try never to ask, or I try to give them the same in value that they give me and more. And so that's my, my fears about living in Florida. I can't think of any others except I'm going to go broke buying groceries. That's probably a fear. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. I'll talk about Florida some more another day. Bye.